Welcome to my apiary. Hi everybody. This is a extractor review of a Vevor or Vevor, I'm not sure how to say that. It's a 2-frame electric extractor. I want to say up front that this extractor was sent to me free of charge, and this is a review, not an endorsement. I am not beholden to this company whatsoever, beyond simply making a review video as requested. And for that, the company has offered you, the viewer, a coupon code for purchase of this extractor or other, and they do offer me 5% of your purchase as an incentive. That is not why I'm doing this review. I'm doing this review so that first of all I can help you make a decision on extractors if you so choose this brand of extractor. And also motivation for me is to procure an extractor to be given as a loaner to our local beekeeping association. I'm the president of the association, and I'd like to give this to the association to be used as a loaner to members should they need an extractor. So here we go. I have not opened the box. I don't know what's in here. They tell me it's an extractor, but I don't really know. And the first thing I can see is that FedEx seems to have bashed up the box quite a bit. It's busted open here. It looks like it's been hit with a forklift or something, so I hope it's not damaged inside the box. It's kind of split open on the top a little bit too, but otherwise not too bad. There are no markings on the box I can see that show country of origin. But I believe this is offshore. Okay, what's in the box? There's a lot of foam pieces in the box, and I've seen reviews of these before, and they always arrive with the foam packing smashed up into many pieces. This one doesn't seem to be too bad. There's a hardware bag here, nuts and bolts and Honeygate. Pull this out. I guess they really need to pack it fairly well so that FedEx doesn't kill it on the way here. So there is indeed an extractor in this box, but as an old shipper and an IT guy, I have a trick for getting stuff out of boxes, and that's to take it out the bottom. I could flip it down on the floor and do it that way, but you know, this is pretty easy to take heavy stuff out of a box this way. You lift the box instead of the machine. Okay, so that's it. On this side, there's a pack of stainless steel legs. For a small extractor, it has a little bit of weight to it, which is probably a good thing. Inside the extractor are the clear doors that go on the top. They're kind of jammed in there with a zip tie holding the basket from turning. Why they really jammed that in there? Okay. As mentioned, this is a 2-frame, so it's pretty tiny. I requested a 3 or 4 frame, but they were only prepared to give me a 2. So the motor and whatnot up here is nicely wrapped. I'm assuming in the bag there are instructions, so I better look at the instructions so I don't lead you astray. Alright, instructions. Take out the device from the cardboard, from the carton carefully. Remove the protective bag and clean it up by detergent and water before its first use. Dry it on a flat floor. I was just looking in there to see extractors often have a bottom that's not flat. This one is conical, so the honey will run to the outside, but it's not beveled, so the honey will just run out the gate because it's a hole in the side, not because the bottom is sloped. That means you might need to tip it to get the last of your honey out, but generally that's when you're done extracting. Assembling the legs. It asks to assemble the legs first. I'm going to assemble the legs last because I want to show you how the rest of this goes together. Second stage says assembling the honey gate. You can see a hole in the bottom, and you know, I'm getting a feel for the quality, the gauge of the stainless steel. The basket is stainless steel. Everything here is stainless. I believe the legs are also stainless, and it's a fairly robust gauge of material here. Standard honey gate. That O-ring has popped out already. Certainly not the smoothest quality gate I've ever seen. I think it'll work just fine. So I need to reach down inside there with this nut to go on the gate. And that's going to be difficult because of the way the basket is. The basket doesn't leave much space for such an operation. And you want to make sure you put the gate on the right way up. So it has to open, the gate opens upward, like so. Yeah, this is, that washer gets in the way every time. I haven't had that problem with other gates, so I wonder what the difference is. Let's see if I can get my arm down in there. You know, I can't. My arms are kind of like Popeye, and I can't get my arm down in there to do that. I see here on the top there are a couple of acorn nuts. I'm going to lift this off so I can get my arm down in there. I'm glad I tried that before installing the doors and whatnot, and the legs. So that's the motor assembly. And one really nice thing I'll point out is the coupler between the motor and the rotor here is it's called a Lovejoy style coupler. And on Lovejoy there's a fiber coupling in there. It's a little cross thing and they actually send you a new one in the bag. So if that wears out at any point, you have a replacement on hand. Except I won't, because I just lose it. Okay, I'm going to pull this out. Pull that basket right out of there. This would be a really good time to do that initial cleaning. See, that's a long way down in there. If you were a smaller person with smaller arms, you may not still reach that because it's a long way. Now, something that can be difficult with these gates is getting them tight, because it's a really big nut in there, and it takes a lot of, like, it would take a really big wrench. Okay, that's nice and tight, and it's also oriented appropriately. While I've got it lighter and easier to use or move around, I'm going to install the legs. So the legs are all in one pack here. Even the plastic they use for that is actually fairly robust. It's not just a very thin cellophane kind of a plastic wrap. I don't know if that's meaningful, but it is. It's just something I noticed. Now for the legs, it's nice that there's actually a captive nut here. So you just simply line that up and put the bolt in. There's a myriad of nuts and bolts in this bag, but there are, when I get something like this, and see, I'm not following directions either, but I'll sort all the hardware by type, and then I'll count how many of each I have. So these bolts here, I have 6. 3 legs, 2 bolts each. Well, that's 6, so that must be the bolt that goes in there. And it does. However, I believe it should have a washer as well. It doesn't show a washer. I have some flat washers here, and there are 6 of them. So I believe it should have a flat washer. Yeah, it says assemble the leg to the barrel with bolts M8 by 16 and screw them down. It doesn't say use washers. So maybe I'm wrong by putting these washers on. But I think it should have washers, so I'm going to put them on. That's a 14 millimeter wrench. I don't think this needs to be super crazy tight, just nice and snug. And I believe you probably want to watch these for loosening as you use the unit, because there is some vibration involved. The larger extractors, I understand, have an option for setting the legs higher or lower depending on how high you want your extractor to sit, and that's most times determined by the bucket you're extracting into. I would expect you want your extractor to be as low as possible and still getting over top of the bucket. Okay, so that's the essence of it. I can see that the legs sit nicely on the table. They're reasonably robust. They have a foot with a hole, so you could screw it to the floor, you could screw it to a pallet, make a little A-frame if you want. And this distance is important because your bucket needs to go under here. And so you're looking at a bucket that would be no more than 12 3/4 inches. That's 12 3/4 right to the bottom of that gate. So that might be important to you for that. All right, now that I have the legs on and the honey gate in, I can put the rotor back in, the cage, the basket, whatever you want to call that. And again, I'm pretty pleased with the build quality here. The bottom of it is actually a formed pan that comes up here and then is welded very cleanly, I will say, to the tub here. I did see a little bit of abrasion from shipping here. Not a huge deal, just a little, scrapes or something here too. I don't see any dents that FedEx caused by bashing it around in transit. So let's put that back in. It's a nice stainless basket. It's got some weight to it. It's robust. It's not flimsy at all. The wells look good. And again, I'm not beholden to this company. I'm not making things up. I'm trying to give you a real world, hands-on look at this thing so that you can choose to purchase or not if you're in the market for something like this. And I would fully expect the larger extractors. You may say, well, I don't want a 2-frame. I'd expect the larger ones are likely of similar build quality. I'm sure they have the same motors. I've seen enough of them online to think they have the same motors. Getting that coupler in there. Now this thing that I undid, that's a kind of an L-shaped bolt. And so I just need to lift this a little bit and get that back through the hole. All the while making sure that coupler is together. And similarly on this side. So my coupler came undone. It's not difficult, you just need 3 hands to do it. So this would be the process should you need to replace that little red coupler piece. Again, not difficult at all, as you can see. You just need to align 3 different things. So again, just snug. I don't think these need to be super tight. There's nothing to back this up. So if you really crank on this, you're just going to bend this top, which I did kind of bend a little bit, but it's not really, compromised at all. So I'm just saying you can't just torque that until it gets real tight, because there's nothing under it. I'm going to undo this cord. Maybe I'll regret that, but I'm going to undo it anyway. It looks like it has a nice control on it. There's a cover over the switch to keep moisture out, and then a variable speed knob there. So the rotor now turns freely. It's I'm surprised it's actually fairly heavy gauge for that cage. Now for the doors. See, I gave up on instructions a long time ago. So there's 2 doors, of course, one on each side. And you know, look at the hardware that they give you. Nice, it looks like stainless hardware. That's a nice touch, you know. Sometimes it's just a hole or a dimple or some crazy thing, and that's actually a really nice touch to have a proper good little handle on that. So I'm just checking this. This is actually magnetic. This little screw here, it's actually magnetic, so that when you raise the door here, it'll catch the motor. It doesn't catch it by much, it's very weak, but that'll help keep the door open. This model has no safety switch. Most extractors don't, but I understand the foreframe of this manufacturer has a safety switch on the door, so when you flip the door open, the rotor comes to a stop. I like to take this film off now so that it doesn't get under the screws. So this one will go on this side, and here's where you drop the screws down in the bucket. So we'll just flip that little, okay. We'll flip that down. There was only plastic on one side. Interesting. A little tiny nut to go onto that little tiny screw. And this is when you're going to drop the nut down the hole. And then I have to turn it over because we know that I can't get my hands down in there. Here's a general principle of assembling things. I learned this many years ago. Oh, they didn't line up the screw holes quite right. Okay. And that principle of assembling things is that you want to make sure you put all of the screws in before you tighten any of them, because there's always a little bit of wiggle, especially when they don't drill the holes quite. I guess it's every bit as good enough for this purpose. Yeah, so you want to put all the screws in before you tighten any. Because if you tighten one or more of them, by the time you get to the last screw, it won't go in. You have to kind of shuffle things a little bit. So just leave them loose. See, that magnet is catching that door now, so that's a nice feature. Gotta say, the hardest part of this assembly so far is putting these little nuts on here. Okay, so it's a Phillips head screw and a very small nut. I'm not sure what size that is, but I don't think I need a wrench. I'll hold it with my hand and just snug. That is a plexiglass, probably Lexan, I suppose. I don't know. You don't want to crack it. Okay, that screw has a problem in the head, and I can't get the screwdriver in it. So that's a frustration right there. There's one spare. So let's see. I'm going to take this one off again. That head is clear. It's always good to have a clear head. Look at that. Okay, now that started out negative and turned out to be really positive. Assuming I don't have another messed up head. That's a big feather in Vevor's cap. They give me a spare so that the one that has a piece of gunk in the head isn't a problem. Or you lose it. I'll lose things all the time. Yeah, having spare hardware, that's huge. This hinge has it's just a manufacturing defect in the hinge. I notice it, but I don't think it's going to cause any kind of a problem at all. My shirt caught on the end of that, and that's actually kind of sharp. So just watch it. You know, Vevor didn't give me one spare, they gave me two. Unless I've got something else I need to screw down with these screws. And I think I'm done though. So good on them for that. It's very good. Especially since these are stainless screws, I assume. And, you know, sometimes not that easy to find. I wouldn't suggest using a power screwdriver for this. I think you could over torque that Lexan or that plastic cover. Now, I think these hinges are a little bit off. This one is kind of weird. No, it's the hinge itself. So this side sits, well, it still sits up a little bit, you know. It's not quite down to the bucket. This one sits up quite a bit, and that's just the way the hinge is. I don't think that's going to cause a problem. These are for safety. These aren't so the honey doesn't fly out. You know, you can open that and the honey doesn't. See, it's still got torque on it, so that doesn't hold on that motor. That one does. Very weak magnet. Not much strength to that at all. So good on Vevor. We've got 2 extra screws, 2 extra nuts, and the Lovejoy coupler. So those all go back in the bag, and we'll save that in a secure place where it will be forgotten by the time we need it. Let's plug this thing in, make it spin. Okay, let's read the directions. Turn counterclockwise the speed adjusting knob to low or 0. 0. Then plug in the power cord into standard AC wall outlet. Put the bee frames into the frame holder of the inner basket. Put either 2 honeycombs at opposite side or more honeycombs to ensure balance. They're probably talking about something that's more than a 2-framer. And then they skip right to once extraction is done. Okay, let's make it go. Turn the power on. Ooh, it's at 0 and it took off, but it stopped again. That's kind of weird. I always find an indication of build quality is how well is the machine balanced when it's empty. So let's ramp this thing up and see what happens. So that's as fast as it goes. And I'm even on a soft floor pad here. And I'm detecting just a very, very slight wobble. So I'm actually pretty impressed with how quiet that is, how smooth it is, and how well balanced it is. So that's pretty good. As a demonstration, I think the idea is to place frames. You kind of have to tip it to get it in there, in here like this. And now I wouldn't run 1 frame, but I don't happen to have 2 on my hand. So that's kind of how that would go. As you can see, I'm doing this in my wood shop. So I've got a couple of frames that I've uncapped that I'm going to drop in here. just so you can watch how this thing actually extracts. Now I put the top bar on this side. I'm going to put the other top bar on that side. That's just the way I think it should go. Now I'm sticky. Now this style of extractor is called a tangential. Well, that's a big long word, but that's opposed to a radial. A radial extractor, the frames sit, they radiate from the center out all the way around. So the honey spins out past the top bar and hits the side of the extractor. These, the honey comes straight out the comb, which you'd think that's a more efficient and maybe quicker system, and I wouldn't disagree with that. However, then you need to take the frame out and flip it around and go back in to extract the other side. Now, having said that, I think the best solution here is to spin these frames, turn them around, spin them moderately, turn them around, and then spin them heavily, like quickly, and then turn them around again. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to have no honey in one side and all honey in the other side. I think you could probably pop your foundation out. So let's check this out. See, there's a little bit of a click there when I turned it on. So they kind of lie into the center until you get it going. They'll hit the outside there pretty fast. There you go. A little bit of rocking around, which is to be expected. You can see the honey hitting the side. And motor placement is a nice place to stabilize the unit. And this is on 60 out of 100. And again, I'm on a soft floor here. It's a soft pad to stand on, so it's certainly worst case scenario as far as that goes. I'll put it on a cement floor. Okay, now we're on a cement floor beside the workbench. That's a whole lot better. That's nearly 80. So scooting around a little bit, but not too bad. Look, I'm not touching it. It wouldn't take much, just screw that to a pallet, and I think you'd be a winner. See, that's 100. 100! I don't know how long this needs to spin. This honey was maybe not the warmest. It sure is quiet. You listen, it's very, very quiet. Maybe I need to spin these frames around. Turn them around, I should say. Let's look at this side. Yeah, that's pretty clean. We'll turn that around. I'm very impressed with how heavy that basket is. It's very heavy for a small. You know, the way they built this extractor. It's this is an inexpensive extractor, but it's inexpensive because it's small, not because it's cheap. You know, they always make them less feature rich and stuff like that, but like this is a little weird here, where this box is not the same dimension as this switch plate. It hangs over on the sides and certainly on the end here. I would think you'd want to make this box a little bigger so that switch plate looks like it belongs there. And it doesn't look like it belongs there to me. Fingers are sticky, so I'm going to get the knob sticky. Oh, it turned on. I turn it right up because we were doing good here a minute ago. Yeah, this is, you know what? This is a good little extractor for somebody that's got like 2 colonies, maybe. I don't know. You'd have to decide. People talk about hand crank extractors, and honestly, the company offered me a 3-frame hand crank versus a 2-frame electric, and I had a tough time deciding. But everyone I've talked to who's bought a hand crank extractor hates it. They just hate them. Because you know what? You turn this thing on, and if it's bolted to something, guess what? Now you go do something else. You go and uncap your next few frames or process some of your wax or your cappings or something while this thing's sitting here. You can get nice long spin times out of this because it has a motor. You can go and do other things. So for the money, if I was a small, 1 or 2 colony beekeeper, I think I'd buy this. I really do. I am partial to a radial because you don't have to turn the frames around. But this is, I'm pretty tickled with this. This is a nice little unit. It's very well made. I'm impressed how well made it is. And I like nice tools. I pay extra money for nice tools. So the fact that you're getting a good price and good equipment, this is sharp though, down here. These ends, these are sharp. You could take a file and make those a little safer because you'll cut yourself on that pretty easily. But look at that. I'm not hanging on to it. It's kind of a, it's a little tall, tippy thing and not very heavy. And it's rock solid right now, spinning those 2 frames. And because it's motorized, you can have extended spin times and make sure you get all your honey out. Now, usually what I do is I'll look down the side and I'll see if I have any, I call them sparkles. See if there's any sparkles. I'll shine a flashlight down there, see if there's any sparkles of the honey coming out of the frame. Yeah, I'm pretty impressed. I'm very impressed with that tiny extractor. They don't come any smaller than this. While this little guy spins, why don't we talk about harvesting honey a bit? And again, this is a level of machine for a hobbyist who's got a few colonies. I don't know how many. You have to figure that out. How long is it going to take you to extract your honey with this machine? This is a machine for a hobbyist with a few colonies, and I don't know what the formula is for deciding how large an extractor you need for how many colonies. And it's not based on colonies really, it's based on honey harvest and how quickly you want to harvest your honey. So I know there are some people in parts of the world who might harvest 50 pounds of honey off of a colony. And I know there are people in the world who harvest 300 pounds of honey off a colony. So you can imagine that the larger amounts would perhaps rationalize a large extractor. Smaller amounts would be appropriate for a smaller extractor. So I don't know. I've extracted these 2 frames pretty quickly, honestly, and I could see doing a box of honey easily in an hour, probably 30 to 45 minutes, because with the electric extractor, I can set these to spin and go and do other things, assuming I don't have to hold it down. These are fairly well balanced, and if I bolted it to a pallet or something weighted down, then that would allow me to not have to tend it while it's spinning. So I know some people like to uncap their honey with a bread knife. I've done that. That works really well. And I found that putting my bread knife in a pitcher of warm water keeps the bread knife warm, and it cleans the wax and honey off it between frames. I just take my bread knife and run it, use the top and bottom bar as a guide, and I just run it down a slight sawing motion, and just run it right down there. The cappings, then you can cap over a bucket, you can cap over a tote, you can buy uncapping tanks from various vendors. If you just look online, you can find those. So how do you get the honey from the hive? A smaller apiary, you can simply pull frames. You can just go to your hive, pull the frame of honey, and brush the bees, give it a shake to shake most of the bees, brush the bees off, put it in a tote or another box off to the side. You can have a wheelbarrow, you can have I have a little wagon that's nice. You want to make sure you close the bottom of the box too if you're just using another honey super. And that's the way I've actually done it, just to harvest a few frames. And that way you're not lifting heavy honey supers off of hives. You can use such things as bee escapes. You could set a bee escape under the honey supers, and then you wait a day or two, maybe 3, and then the bees, usually, nothing's perfect, will cycle down through the bee escape. The bee escape is kind of a labyrinth kind of a unit, and it allows the bees to escape down through the bee escape, and then it confounds their ability to come back up into the honey super. You can use fume boards. Fume boards are quite effective. They're more effective on a sunny day because they use the heat of the sun to activate the material that you put in the fume board. And then you're buying the product that goes in under the fume board. There's a felt product under there that you spray the liquid on, and it's a liquid that some of it doesn't really smell bad, but it's kind of strong, and the bees don't like it. So you set the fume board on top of the hive, and it takes a few minutes, 5 minutes perhaps, 10 minutes, and the bees kind of vacate that honey super from the fume board. You don't want to use a fume board and a bee escape. They're separate deals. You can use leaf blowers. I don't like using leaf blower. I have used it, and I will use it when necessary, but it's my last resort. You take the super off, tip it up on its side, blow the leaf blower through between the frames, kind of separate them like pages of a book, and blow the bees out that way. You want to blow the bees out toward the front of the hive, and also blow the bees in a direction where you're not going to be walking. So if I'm going to go blow the bees like this direction, for example, then I'll start at that end of the apiary, blow the bees that way, and keep moving backwards so that I'm not moving toward where I've blown bees, because there's a lot of bees that'll just be on the ground and they'll walk in. So those are some of the ways I can think of to harvest honey. I'll use escape boards. If they don't work well in any given situation, then I'll resort to a fume board, and if necessary, a leaf blower. But just picking a frame, I call it cherry picking. You pick a frame and brush it off. That's effective too. If you only have a couple of colonies, that's a really good way to do it. Other items of note here on the instructions are that it will accept 220 or 110 volt. And just because I am who I am, I know that that's actually 240 or 120. It's a 140 watt, 50 hertz, which is strange because I'm in North America and we're running on 60 hertz, so I don't know how that goes. Material of the basket, it says it's 201/304 stainless steel. Commonly I see 304 is a pretty common grade of stainless. I don't know what 201 is. I don't know why they list 201/304. Material of barrel is also 201/304. Honey gate is plastic. Here's dimensions in centimeters, 43 by 43 by 91. So I guess it's 43 by 43 because it's round. So it's 91 high. The weight is 15.8 kilograms, if you're wondering how heavy this thing is. It's not real heavy. It's 34 pounds, 35 pounds. So that's what the instructions show. Yeah, you know what? I'm very glad I did this, because I think this will be a really good unit for our association to loan out to that. I'm thinking that new beekeeper who, you know, believed the stuff you hear on social media that you're not going to get honey your first year. Well, you get honey your first year. Don't you worry about it. In my part of the world, for sure. And so I think because of some of that talk that people believe from people in different parts of the world, and I realize not everybody does get honey the first year, that they get blindsided. August comes by and they've got 3 deeps of honey on their on their colony that was a nuke 3 months ago. I think this is a really good unit for that beekeeper who's new, and they get blindsided with no extractor, and they say, oh no, what am I going to do? I need to extract honey. This is going to be a really good loaner for that person. And yeah, I guess that wraps up the review of the 2-frame electric Vevor honey extractor. Thanks for watching. Take care and have fun with your bees.